It was a cold, rainy morning in Portland, Oregon. The kind of morning when the streets glistened with reflections of headlights and the scent of wet leaves mixed with the faint smell of coffee from the corner cafes. On bus line 14, winding through Hawthorne Boulevard, the only sound was the rhythmic hiss of the windshield wipers. At 6:45 a.m., Donna McKay, a TriMet bus driver with 20 years on the job, pulled into the last stop of her route. She was tired, craving her second cup of coffee and ready to clock out. But as she walked down the narrow aisle to make her routine inspection before closing up, she froze. There, on the very last seat, wrapped in a thin floral blanket, was a baby. A girl, maybe a few weeks old, sleeping so quietly that Donna thought for a brief second she was dreaming. Her breath caught in her chest. "Oh my God, who would leave a baby here?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Donna called for help, her voice shaky as she radioed dispatch. Within minutes, police cars arrived, their red and blue lights bouncing off the fogged bus windows. Neighbors peeked from their porches as officers carefully carried the baby out, wrapped now in Donna's own jacket. At the hospital, the doctor said she was perfectly healthy. No note, no identification, nothing but the blanket and a small silver pendant shaped like a feather. The story made the local news that evening. Infant found abandoned on TriMet bus. For a few days, people in Portland couldn't stop talking about it. Who was she? Where were her parents? But as weeks turned into months, the city's attention faded. Yet for Evan and Ruth Carter, a quiet couple who lived near Laurelhurst Park, that story never left their minds. They had tried for years to have a child, their home filled with the silence of waiting. When they heard about the baby, they felt something shift deep inside them. After long procedures, interviews, and months of waiting, the adoption was approved. The baby girl, once nameless, was now Lena Carter. Her new home smelled of cinnamon and fresh paint, her crib placed near a window that looked out on maple trees. Ruth used to hum lullabies every night, while Evan rocked Lena to sleep, whispering, "You're safe now, little one. You're home." Years passed. The pendant was tucked away in a jewelry box, along with the newspaper clipping from that October morning. Lena grew into a bright, curious child, full of energy and kindness. She had big, searching eyes, the kind that seemed to ask silent questions about everything she saw. Every October, when the air turned crisp and leaves painted the sidewalks red, Ruth would glance out the window and tighten her scarf a little more. Evan would look at the old newspaper, now folded and fading, and quietly put it back in the drawer. They loved Lena deeply, more than anything, but they both knew that someday she might start asking questions they weren't ready to answer. And as Lena's 12th birthday approached, something small but significant happened, something that would plant the first seed of doubt in her young heart. But that's where fate began to stir again, quietly, in the background of her perfect borrowed life. If you were Lena, would you want to know the truth about your past, even if it might hurt the people who raised you? Tell us in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more emotional stories like this one. By the time Lena turned 12, Portland felt like a map of small rituals. Saturday mornings meant hot chocolate at a cafe on Hawthorne where the barista drew hearts in milk foam. Sundays were for walking through Laurelhurst Park, counting ducks on the pond. Rainy afternoons were for getting lost between the shelves at Powell's City of Books. She loved the city's gentle hum, the clang of bike bells on the Burnside Bridge, the hiss of rain on bus shelters, the way streetlights seemed to crown the wet pavement with gold. At school, Lena was the kind of student teachers remembered. She raised her hand with careful thought and made friends easily. A soft-spoken girl with a sharp memory and a sketchbook always tucked under her arm. But in quiet moments, when she looked in the mirror, she would sometimes notice the curve of her cheekbone, the shape of her eyes, and feel a strange gap between the face she saw and the family she loved. It began with the envelope. One October afternoon, while searching the hall closet for extra candles during a power outage, Lena found a thin, yellowed envelope wedged behind a stack of board games. The paper felt brittle. On the front, in Evan's tidy handwriting, was a date. October 14th, the day she knew as her found day, though no one called it that. Ruth noticed the envelope in Lena's hands and froze, her flashlight beam wobbling. That's old Bill's, she said too quickly, taking it from her and tucking it into her cardigan pocket. Nothing interesting. Let's go find those candles, sweetheart. It wasn't the words that lingered. It was the way Ruth had avoided her eyes. A week later, Lena overheard a whisper that wasn't meant for her. She had crept downstairs late at night for a glass of water and paused by the kitchen doorway, hidden by a wall of ivy plants in the window. She's getting older, Ruth whispered. We should tell her something. What do we tell her? Evan's voice was tired. We weren't there. We don't know why. We just know how we found her, and that she's ours. Silence. Then the soft sound of two palms finding each other on the table. In the morning, everything was cheerfully normal. Evan packed Lena's lunch. Ruth complimented her drawing of St. John's Bridge, all elegant arcs and cables. But now Lena saw the seams. She noticed how Ruth changed the subject whenever someone mentioned birth stories. She noticed how Evan closed the drawer too quickly when she reached for the tape dispenser, as though hiding clutter from a guest. 2 years passed. Lena kept a tiny notebook where she jotted down details like a detective. The date on the envelope, the way the old newspaper in the desk drawer was folded, always left to right. A single line of numbers she spotted once on a crumpled post-it, 14 bus, before Evan slid it into his pocket with a sigh. At 14, she visited the Oregon Historical Society with her class and found herself drawn to the microfilm machines, where old newspapers flickered in gray light. She typed a few words she knew by heart. The headline was still there, Infant Found Abandoned on TriMet Bus, a black and white blur that snapped her heartbeat into a sprint. She read the paragraph 3 times, searching for clues it didn't offer. No names, no details, just healthy, no identification, police seeking information. She didn't tell Evan and Ruth. She didn't know how. That winter, Lena made a friend who saw her too clearly. Noah, a year older and on the school paper, had a way of listening that made people confess things without meaning to. They studied together at a quiet bakery in Nob Hill, trading bites of cinnamon rolls and arguments about whether truth was always kinder than silence. One day you're going to write something that changes someone's life, Lena told him, half teasing. Maybe, he said. Or maybe I'll help someone tell their own story. On a rainy March afternoon, after a small fight with Ruth about curfew that felt bigger than it was, Lena took the long way home on foot. She passed a bus idling under a web of dripping branches and felt a pulse of recognition she couldn't name. The driver leaned forward to check the back rows. The lights hummed. The windows breathed fog. A chord of memory thrummed through her. Not her own, but borrowed from a story her parents hadn't told. Some questions are like seeds. You don't plant them. They plant themselves, and one day you look up and realize there's a forest. Lena lay awake that night listening to the rain drum on the roof and made a promise to herself, quiet as a prayer. When she was old enough, she would look for answers. Not to replace the life she had, never that, but to understand the life that had led her there. On the morning of her 18th birthday, as the light sifted through the curtains and the house smelled like blueberry pancakes, Evan handed her a small wrapped box. Happy birthday, kiddo. Inside was a silver pendant, a delicate feather, cool against her palm. It felt oddly familiar, and when she looked up, both her parents were watching her with a fragile softness, like people who had rehearsed a conversation and were still afraid to speak. Your story is yours, Evan said at last. When you're ready, we'll be ready too. Lena closed her fingers around the pendant. For the first time, the gap between her reflection and her family felt not like a void, but like a doorway. And a few months later, when she packed her boxes to move into a tiny studio near Nob Hill, she would open a battered carton labeled Misk and find a photograph that would finally turn the handle. The new apartment was small but full of light. From her window, Lena could see the rooftops of Nob Hill sloping down toward the city and the faint outline of Mount Hood on clear days. It was the first place that was truly hers, a blank page waiting for her to write whatever came next. She spent her first week unpacking slowly, building small pockets of comfort. Books stacked beside the window, sketches taped to the fridge, a chipped mug she refused to throw away. Her parents helped her move in, their laughter warm but tinged with the quiet ache of letting go. After they left, Lena began opening boxes marked old stuff. She wanted to fill the silence. One box, heavier than the others, sealed with layers of tape, caught her eye. Written across the top in her father's handwriting were the words, "Misk Attic." Inside were things she didn't recognize: photo albums, yellowing documents, a faded bus schedule, and a few envelopes with no return address. Near the bottom was a small wooden box tied with string. Her hands trembled slightly as she untied the knot and lifted the lid. Inside lay a single photograph. It was old, the colors washed out, but the image was sharp enough to steal her breath. A young woman with long dark hair sat inside a city bus holding a bundled baby against her chest. The woman's coat was bright red, unmistakable even through the faded tones. Her eyes were tired but kind, as if she was smiling through sorrow. On the back, written in neat cursive, was a message: "One day you'll understand." Below it, a date: October 13th, 1999. Lena felt her stomach drop. That was the day before she was found. She stared at the photo under the glow of her desk lamp, her heart pounding like a drum. Who was this woman? Was this her mother? How had this photo ended up in a box marked "Attic"? The next morning, she drove to her parents' house, the photo tucked into her notebook. Ruth was in the kitchen rolling out dough, her sleeves dusted with flour. When Lena placed the photo on the counter, Ruth froze, the rolling pin still in her hands. "Where did you find this?" she whispered. "In one of the boxes from the attic." "Mom, who is she?" Ruth pressed her lips together. Evan came in from the living room, his eyes flicking to the photo, then to his wife. The silence between them stretched, fragile and thick. "We were going to tell you," Evan said softly. "We just didn't know when." Lena waited, the air sharp in her lungs. "That woman," Ruth said finally, "is the one who left you. The driver gave that photo to the police the day you were found. They said it was sitting on the seat beside you. We kept it. We thought someday when you were ready." Lena's throat tightened. "Why didn't you show me before?" "Because we wanted you to know love first," Ruth said, tears glistening. "Not loss." That night Lena couldn't sleep. She sat by her window, tracing the edges of the photograph with her thumb. Outside, the city shimmered under a thin veil of rain, buses rumbling quietly in the distance. The next day, she took the photo to the Oregon Historical Society, where she'd gone years ago for that school trip. She asked if they had old TriMet employee records. The archivist, an older man with silver glasses, smiled faintly. "Not an easy search," he said, "but give me a day." 2 days later, he called her back. "I think I found something," he said. There was a Marina Alvarez, part-time assistant for TriMet in the late 90s. She was never officially a driver, but she worked night shifts cleaning buses. There's a note here, a child protection case filed the same week she disappeared. Lena felt her world tilt. That night, she showed the findings to Noah, who had started interning at a small Portland newspaper. He looked at her, astonished. "This is big, Lena. You could find out everything." "Or find out nothing," she said quietly. "Maybe she left because she had to." Noah leaned forward. "You don't really believe that?" She didn't answer, but deep down she wanted to. As she fell asleep that night, the sound of buses passing below her window seemed almost human, like sighs, like whispers from another time. She dreamed of a woman in a red coat looking out a rain-streaked window, whispering something she couldn't quite hear. And when she woke, the first thing she did was whisper back, "Mom?" Outside, a new day was breaking, one that would bring answers Lena never imagined, and pain she wasn't sure she was ready to face. For the next few weeks, Lena's life became a blur of research, phone calls, and long walks through Portland's misty streets. Every bus that passed by seemed to carry ghosts, echoes of a story she was slowly piecing together. She returned to the Oregon Historical Society almost every day, combing through faded employee rosters, maintenance records, and old bus schedules. The name Marina Alvarez appeared again and again, handwritten in pencil, sometimes misspelled, but always connected to night shifts at the TriMet depot near Division Street. The more she learned, the heavier the truth became. Marina had been an immigrant from Mexico, arriving in the U.S. in her early 20s with nothing but a suitcase and a promise of work. Her file mentioned unpaid wages, long hours, and a temporary restraining order against a man whose name had been blacked out in official documents. The year she disappeared, she had been living in a small apartment near S.E. Belmont, just 2 blocks from the bus line where Lena was found. Lena couldn't eat. She barely slept. Her mind circled endlessly around one thought. My mother didn't abandon me because she didn't care. She did it because she had to. Noah was the only one who knew what she was doing. He met her at the corner cafe almost every evening, spreading newspaper clippings across the table. "You realize," he said one night, "this could be an incredible story, not just for the paper but for you." Lena looked at him, her voice low. "I don't want it to be a story. I want it to be a reunion." Noah's expression softened. "Then let's find her." They started with city records, leases, court documents, hospital files. After days of searching, Noah found an address for a Marlene Cooper, listed as Marina's emergency contact in 2000. She lived now in Vancouver, Washington, just across the river. 2 days later, Lena stood in front of a small yellow house with peeling paint and a mailbox full of flyers. Her hands trembled as she knocked. The woman who opened the door was in her 50s, her hair tied in a loose bun, eyes sharp but kind. "Can I help you?" "My name is Lena Carter," she began. "I'm looking for someone who used to work at TriMet, Marina Alvarez." Marlene froze. Her hand went to her mouth. "Oh my God, you're her daughter." Lena's heart stopped. "You knew?" Marlene nodded slowly and stepped aside. "Come in." The living room smelled of lavender and old books. Marlene sat heavily on the couch, staring at a framed photo on the mantel, a younger woman in a red coat. "She loved you," Marlene said, voice breaking. "She talked about you every day. I begged her to go to the police to tell someone, but she was terrified. That man she left, he threatened to kill you both if she didn't disappear. She thought leaving you somewhere safe was the only way." Lena pressed a hand to her chest, struggling to breathe. "She came back for me, didn't she?" Marlene nodded. "Every year on your birthday, she left flowers at the bus depot. She tried to find the woman who'd rescued you. The driver, Donna, right? But by then, Donna had retired. Marina got sick before she could keep searching." "Sick?" "Cancer. It spread fast. She passed last year." The words landed like stones. The hope that had carried Lena this far cracked under their weight. Marlene reached for a small wooden box on the shelf. "She left this for you. She made me promise to give it to you if you ever came." Inside was a folded letter. The edges worn, the ink faded but legible. Lena opened it with trembling hands. "My dearest daughter, if you are reading this, it means life has finally led you back to me, even if I am gone. I have loved you every single day. I never left because I wanted to. I left because I couldn't protect you otherwise. I prayed someone kind would find you. Please forgive me for letting fear decide for both of us. Love, your mother, Marina." Tears streamed down Lena's face. She pressed the letter to her heart, as if trying to feel her mother's warmth through the paper. Marlene placed a hand on her shoulder. She used to say, "Love doesn't end when you leave. It waits." That night, Lena drove back to Portland in silence, the letter on the passenger seat, the city lights reflecting on her windshield like stars. She parked near the Willamette River, watching the water move gently under the bridge. Somewhere in the distance, a bus rolled past, its lights flickering through the fog. She whispered, "I found you, Mom." But even as she said it, she knew the story wasn't over yet, because one person still held a piece of the truth. Donna McKay. Would you want to meet the person who found you? The one who unknowingly changed your destiny forever? The next morning, Lena woke before sunrise. The city was still half asleep, just the murmur of buses starting their early routes and the faint aroma of coffee drifting from downtown cafes. She sat on the edge of her bed, the letter from Marina still in her hands. The paper had softened overnight, as if it had absorbed her tears. There was one more person she needed to see, the woman who had found her 25 years ago. After a few calls to the TriMet office, she finally got a lead. Donna McKay, now retired, lived on the outskirts of Portland, in a quiet neighborhood surrounded by tall evergreens. Lena drove there slowly, her pulse steady but heavy. Donna's house was small and neat, with a blue mailbox and wind chimes that sang softly in the breeze. When the door opened, a woman in her 60s appeared. Short hair, deep lines around her eyes, but a kind smile that carried the same calm as that long-ago morning. "Yes?" Lena's voice shook. "Are you Donna McKay?" "I am. My name is Lena Carter. You found me. On your bus. 25 years ago." For a moment, Donna didn't speak. Her eyes widened, then softened with disbelief and emotion. "Oh, sweetheart. Come in. Please. Come in." The living room smelled of lemon and books. Photos of family lined the walls, but on a small side table sat a single framed clipping, a newspaper headline from years ago. "Infant found abandoned on Tri-Met bus." "You kept it," Lena whispered. Donna nodded. "Some things never leave you. I always wondered who you became. I used to pray you had a good life." Lena smiled through tears. "I did. My parents, Evan and Ruth, they gave me everything. But I always felt there was something missing, something I needed to understand." Donna's expression turned thoughtful. "There's something I need to show you." She disappeared into the hallway and returned holding a sealed envelope. "A few weeks after you were found, I got this in the mail. No return address. I opened it, but inside was just another envelope with your name written on it, and a note asking me not to open it until you came back." Lena's breath caught. "My name?" Donna nodded and handed her the envelope. The handwriting on it was elegant, trembling slightly, the same as on the letter from Marina. Lena opened it carefully. Inside was a small Polaroid photograph, the same woman in the red coat, smiling faintly, and beneath it, a single sentence. "Tell her I was never gone. I've been with her every time the bus doors opened." A sob broke from her chest. Donna reached out, holding her hand. Neither spoke for a long while. Outside, the morning light spilled gently through the trees, painting everything in a soft gold. Finally, Lena whispered, "I used to dream about buses, about waiting for someone who never came. Now I understand why." Donna smiled through tears. "You've carried her love all along. You just didn't know its name." Lena looked at the photo again. The woman's eyes, her mother's eyes, seemed to look straight into hers, alive even through faded ink. Later that evening, Lena drove toward the Willamette River. She parked near the same spot she'd stood the night before and sat by the water, watching the reflections ripple. She took out both letters, the one from Marlene's house and the one from Donna, and read them under the fading light. Then she opened her hand. The silver feather pendant glimmered faintly. She remembered the day Evan and Ruth had given it to her, how it had felt both new and familiar. Now she knew why. It had been hers all along, the last piece her mother had left. She placed the pendant gently in the river, watching it float for a moment before sinking beneath the surface. "I forgive you," she whispered, "and I love you." The wind rose slightly, rustling the trees almost like a sigh. When Lena returned home that night, she found a small note taped to her door. It was from Noah. "For your story, for her story. They're the same now." She smiled, tears blurring her vision. For the first time in her life, she felt whole, not because every mystery had been solved, but because she finally understood the meaning of her mother's words. Love doesn't vanish. It waits. It lingers in the spaces between loss and memory, between what was taken and what was found. And sometimes all it takes is one old photograph to show you that you were never truly alone. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs a reminder that love endures. What would you have done if you were Lena? Tell us in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more true emotional stories like this one.